Hey everyone, and welcome to Inside the Lab. Today we are talking about what it's going to take to build next-generation displays for virtual and augmented reality. Now, making 3D displays that are as vivid and realistic as the physical world, it's going to take solving some fundamental challenges that we're going to get into today. And these are some pretty interesting problems because they're all about how we physically perceive things and how our eyes process visual signals and how our brains interpret them to construct a model of the world. It all gets pretty deep, and I have some new prototypes to show you today that we've been building in our labs. And then Chief Scientist of Reality Labs, Michael Abrash, is also going to join us today too. But first I want to talk for a few minutes about why this matters. Displays that match the full capacity of human vision are going to unlock some really important things. The first is a realistic sense of presence, and that's the feeling of being with someone or in some place as if you're physically there. And given our focus on helping people connect, you can see why this is such a big deal. The other day, I was testing some of our work on photorealistic avatars, and it was a mixed reality experience, so you can see around you, your surroundings, the room you're in, and everything looks like it would if you took the headset off, except there's a person right there with you. And you can walk around them, you can see them move, you can get the sense that they're really there. And you can imagine that if that was someone in your family who lives far away, or someone who you're collaborating on a project with, or even an artist who you like, you can imagine what it would be like to really feel like they're there with you and that you're physically together. So that's presence, and that's what I'm talking about when I say that word. Now, another reason why these kind of realistic displays are so important is that they're going to unlock a whole new generation of visual experiences. And this is part of the story of technology and culture over time. And we've seen that our culture evolves to adopt the levels of depth and richness that our technology can provide. And then the next thing comes along and it opens up new forms of art and individual expression. People have a deep desire to feel understood. And so being able to express yourself in as immersive and realistic of a way as possible is very powerful and important to us. And we've seen this since the beginning of our company, as the mediums that we use to express ourselves just keep growing in richness and depth. And we're in the middle of a big step forward towards realism and creativity right now. It's not going to be that long until we can create scenes in basically perfect fidelity. And only, instead of just looking at them on a screen, you're going to feel like you're there, experiencing things that you'd otherwise never get to experience. And that feeling, the richness of that experience, that's why this sense of realism matters. So current VR systems can already give you a sense that you're in another place. And it's hard to describe how profound this is. It's something that you kind of need to experience for yourself. But we still have a long way to go in the displays and graphic stacks before we can get to visual realism. And the reason here is that the human visual system is deeply integrated. So just seeing a realistic looking image alone isn't enough. To get this feeling of immersion, you need all of the other visual cues as well. And this is a much more complex problem than just displaying a realistic looking image on a computer screen or a TV. You need stereoscopic displays to create 3D images. You need to be able to render objects and focus your eyes at different distances, which is different from a traditional screen or display where you only need to focus it at one distance where you're holding your phone or your monitor is. You need a display that can cover a much wider angle of your field of view than traditional displays. And having retina-level resolution across that whole field of view requires way more pixels than anything on a traditional display. You need screens that can approximate the brightness and dynamic range of the physical world, which requires almost 10 times more brightness than even what we get on HD TVs today. You need realistic motion tracking, so that has low latency, so that way when you turn your head, it feels like it's positionally correct in the immersive world that you're in. And then to power all of those pixels on the display, you need to build a new graphics pipeline that can get the best performance out of the CPUs and GPUs that we can fit in a headset without running them so hot that they drain your battery quickly or generate so much physical heat that they get too hot on your face. And of course, you need to fit all that into a device that's comfortable to wear. So if any of these pieces aren't implemented well, it breaks that feeling of immersion, and you really feel that way more than you would on a typical 2D screen today. So we've solved some of these challenges already, and for others, there's still a lot of work to do. Building these devices, it's an integrated effort that includes not just displays, but also state-of-the-art work on software and silicon, sensors, and other hardware that need to work together seamlessly. Today, we're just going to focus on the display system, though. This is the last link in the chain. It's the components that take the final rendered graphical output and convert it to the photons that your eye sees. And it's obviously an important step, and figuring out what we need to do to get it as good as possible was the inspiration for what we internally call the visual Turing test. So now, to talk a little bit more about the visual Turing test, I'd like to bring on Michael Abrash to explain more what that is. Michael?
Hi, Mark. So Alan Turing conceived the Turing test in 1950 to evaluate whether a computer could pass as a human. The visual Turing test, which is a phrase that we've adopted along with a number of other academic researchers, is a way to evaluate whether what's displayed in VR can be distinguished from the real world. And it's a completely subjective test because what's important here is the human perception of what they're seeing, the human experience, rather than technical measurements. And it's a test that no VR technology can pass today. While VR already does, as you said, create a strong sense of presence, of being in virtual places in a genuinely convincing way, it's not yet at the level where anyone would wonder whether what they're looking at is real or virtual.
All right, so today we're going to go through some of the display technology stack and talk about some of the challenges that we're trying to solve. Because as you say, what makes this such an interesting problem is that the core technology to pass the visual Turing test doesn't exist yet in any consumer headset or product. I think a lot of people are going to say, hey, hang on, a decent computer monitor or phone or TV has a pretty good display. So, what makes AR and VR so different? But again, as we've learned, building 3D VR displays that you can wear is a lot more complicated for a number of the reasons that I mentioned before and that we're going to go into a lot more detail today. So let's talk about why that is.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects. The obvious current limitation is resolution, but the challenges are far, far deeper than that. So VR introduces a slew of new issues that simply don't exist with 2D displays, with names like vergence accommodation conflict, chromatic aberration, ocular parallax, pupil swim. And before we even get to those, there's the challenge that AR/VR displays have to fit into compact, lightweight headsets and run for long periods off batteries in those headsets. So right off the bat, this is just really difficult. Now, one of the unique challenges of VR is that the lenses used in current VR displays often distort the virtual image. And that reduces realism unless the distortion is fully corrected in software. And doing that is very complex because the distortion varies as the eye moves around to look in different directions. And while it's not actually part of realism, headsets can be hard to use for extended periods of time because of that distortion, and also because of the headset's weight, both of which can cause some temporary discomfort and fatigue. Another key challenge is around the ability to focus at any distance.
Yeah, so the basic thing here is your eyes try to focus, and you can't because the display is projecting as if it's at a fixed distance. As we've been working through this, we focused our research on a couple of key areas that we think have the best possibility for making a jump forward here.